Captain Dong-Su stared at the emergency alert flashing red across his command screen. His coffee had gone cold an hour ago, but he barely noticed. The words on the display made his stomach turn. Priority: Alpha Containment Breach, Kepler 4A42 Research. Station Void Stalkers escaped, all personnel missing. He rubbed his tired eyes and read the message again. Void Stalkers. The name alone sent fear through every civilized world in the galaxy. These creatures were living nightmares, perfect killing machines that had evolved on the dark rim worlds where no sane being dared to travel. The bridge door hissed open, and Dr. Hai-Jin rushed in, her usually neat lab coat wrinkled and her black hair escaping from its tight bun. She carried a data pad clutched against her chest like a shield. "Captain, have you seen the reports from Kepler Station?" she asked, her voice shaking slightly. "Just reading them now," Dong-Su replied, gesturing to his screen. "Tell me this is some kind of mistake." Hai-Jin shook her head slowly. "I wish it was. The automated system sent out the final transmission 6 hours ago. Since then, nothing but silence." Security Commander Taeho entered the bridge, his heavy boots clicking against the metal floor. His usually calm face looked grim. Behind him came Communications Specialist So Young, her fingers dancing nervously over her portable comm unit. "Sir," Taeho said, standing at attention, "Coalition Command is ordering all available ships to respond immediately. They want a full military escort for the science vessels." "Science vessels?" Dong-Su raised an eyebrow. "What good will scientists do against void stalkers?" So Young stepped forward, her young face pale but determined. "Captain, the situation is worse than we thought. The escaped creatures aren't just any void stalkers. They're a breeding pair." The bridge fell silent except for the quiet hum of the ship's engines. Everyone knew what that meant. A single adult void stalker could tear through a squad of armed soldiers like they were made of paper. A mated pair would be unstoppable. "How many people were on that station?" Dong-Su asked quietly. 847, Hai-Jin whispered. "Researchers, support staff, security teams, all gone." Dong-Su closed his eyes for a moment. 847 souls, probably dead within hours of the breach. Void stalkers were known throughout the galaxy for their ruthless efficiency. They stood 3 meters tall on powerful legs with claws that could slice through reinforced steel. Their black fur seemed to absorb light itself, making them nearly invisible in darkness. But what made them truly terrifying was their minds. Void stalkers could communicate telepathically, not just with each other, but with their prey. They could sense fear, track thoughts, and coordinate attacks with perfect precision. There were stories of entire colonies being hunted to extinction by just a few of these creatures. "What were they doing with live void stalkers on a research station?" Taeho asked, his hand unconsciously moving to his weapon. Hai-Jin consulted her data pad. According to the files, they were studying their hunting behavior and telepathic abilities. The Galactic Council wanted to understand how they could be so effective as predators. "Studying them," So Young muttered. "Like keeping dragons in a cage and wondering why they breathe fire." "The question now," Dong-Su said, standing up from his captain's chair, "is where did they go after they escaped?" So Young's comm unit beeped with an incoming message. She read it quickly, her face growing even paler. "Sir, I'm getting reports from the mining colonies in the outer system. 3 different locations have reported sightings of large, dark creatures moving through their territories." "Casualties?" Taeho asked. "That's the strange part," So Young replied, frowning at her screen. "Very few actual deaths reported. Lots of destroyed equipment and torn-up buildings, but most of the miners managed to evacuate." Hai-Jin looked puzzled. "That doesn't match the typical void stalker behavior pattern. They're supposed to be perfect hunters. Why would they let so many escape?" Dongsu walked to the large viewing port at the front of the bridge. Stars stretched endlessly before them, cold and distant. Somewhere out there, two of the galaxy's most dangerous predators were loose, and nobody knew what they wanted. Set course for the Kepler station, he ordered. We need to see what happened there before we can understand what they're doing now. Sir, Taeho said hesitantly, shouldn't we wait for the main fleet? Going in alone against Void Stalkers is suicide, Dongsu finished. Maybe. But those creatures have already been free for 6 hours. Every minute we wait, they get further away or cause more damage. Besides, they're probably long gone from the station by now. The ship's engines hummed louder as they changed course toward the research station. Through the viewing port, Dongsu could see other coalition vessels moving in the same direction, their lights twinkling like distant fireflies. Captain, Heejin said softly, there's something else in the research files that you should know. What is it? The Void Stalkers they were keeping weren't just any breeding pair. They had offspring, 3 cubs that were being held in a separate facility. The bridge fell silent again. Cubs meant that these weren't just dangerous predators on the loose. They were parents. Where are the cubs now? Dongsu asked, though he was afraid he already knew the answer. The files are incomplete, Heejin replied, but there are transfer records showing they were moved to another location 3 days before the escape. So the adults broke free, but their young ones are still imprisoned somewhere else, So Young said quietly. Dongsu turned back to face his crew. In all his years serving in the Coalition fleet, he had seen many dangerous situations. Pirates, hostile aliens, even natural disasters that could destroy entire worlds. But he had never faced anything like this. Void Stalkers were engines of destruction, created by evolution to be perfect killers. But now he was beginning to wonder if there might be more to the story. The lack of casualties at the mining colonies, the systematic way they were moving through space, the timing of their escape so soon after their cubs were taken away. All hands, prepare for approach to Kepler Station, he announced over the ship's communication system. We're going to find out exactly what happened there. As their ship moved through space toward the silent research station, Dongsu couldn't shake the feeling that they were missing something important. Something that might change everything they thought they knew about the creatures they were hunting, or the creatures that might be hunting them. The Kepler research station hung in space like a broken toy. Captain Dongsu watched through the viewing port as his ship approached the massive structure. What should have been a bright beacon of scientific progress now drifted dark and silent, against the stars. Sensor scan complete, So Young reported from her communication station. No life signs detected anywhere on the station. Dongsu nodded grimly. He had expected this, but hearing it confirmed still sent a chill through him. 847 people all gone. Hull integrity? He asked. That's the strange part, Taeho said, studying his security readings. The station's outer hull is mostly intact. Whatever happened, it came from inside. Dr. Hyejin looked up from her science console. I'm detecting unusual energy signatures throughout the station. The patterns match Void Stalker telepathic resonance, but they're much stronger than anything in our database. The ship moved closer to the station's docking bay. Through the port windows, they could see twisted metal and scattered debris floating in the vacuum of space. Emergency lights blinked red in some sections, while others remained completely dark. Take us in slowly, Dongsu ordered. Full shields, weapons ready. As they docked with the station, the crew prepared for boarding. Taeho checked his pulse rifle twice, while So Young tested her portable scanner equipment. Hyejin gathered her medical supplies and scientific instruments. Remember, Dongsu said as they suited up, we're here to gather information, not to fight. If those creatures are still on board, we retreat immediately. The airlock cycled open with a soft hiss. Beyond it lay the station's main corridor, dimly lit by emergency lighting. The walls showed deep claw marks, gouged so deeply that sparks still flickered from damaged power cables. They moved carefully through the empty hallways. Their footsteps echoed strangely in the artificial gravity. Every shadow could hide a 3-meter-tall killing machine. Every sound could be the whisper of approaching death. The damage patterns are consistent with Voidstalker claws, Hyejin observed, running her scanner over the torn wall panels. But look at this. She pointed to a section where the metal had been carefully peeled back, rather than slashed apart. This isn't random destruction. Someone was looking for something. They reached the station's main laboratory. The heavy security door had been torn completely off its hinges. Inside, research equipment lay scattered across the floor, but again, not randomly. Computers had been opened with surgical precision, their memory cores removed intact. They were searching through the data files, So Young said, examining the opened computers. But why would Void Stalkers care about research data? Taeho found something even stranger. "Captain, you need to see this." He led them to what had been the station's cafeteria. Tables and chairs were overturned, but in one corner, they found a small shelter built from furniture and emergency blankets. "Someone survived the initial attack," Taeho explained. "They hid here for hours, maybe days." Hyejin scanned the area with her medical equipment. "I'm detecting human biotraces. Whoever was here left recently within the last few hours." They searched the shelter and found a small recording device hidden under some debris. So Young connected it to her portable system and played back the final message. The voice was scared but clear. "This is Dr. Park Min-ho, Xenobiology Department. The creatures broke containment at AWO 347 hours. They're not killing randomly like the report suggested. They're searching for something. I heard them making sounds, not roars or growls, but something else. Something that sounded almost like crying." The recording continued. "They went through every lab, every computer system. They found the transfer records. Oh God, they know their cubs were taken away. They're not monsters. They're parents looking for their children." The message ended abruptly with the sound of approaching footsteps and a door opening. The crew stood in stunned silence. Everything they thought they knew about the situation had just changed completely. "Parents," Hyejin whispered. "They're looking for their cubs." Dongsu felt his understanding of the crisis shift, like pieces of a puzzle falling into place. "So Young, get me all the sensor data from the mining colonies that reported sightings." She worked quickly at her portable station. "The reports are coming in now, sir. 3 different mining operations, all in the outer system." "What's the pattern of their movement?" he asked. So Young projected a holographic map showing the locations and times of each sighting. The path was clear. The Void Stalkers were moving systematically from one location to another, searching in a grid pattern. "They're not wandering randomly," Taeho observed. "They have a plan." Hyejin was analyzing the telepathic energy readings from her scanner. "Captain, I'm detecting residual psionic traces throughout the station. But these aren't the aggressive hunting patterns we'd expect from predators. The emotional resonance suggests extreme distress." "Parental distress," Dongsu said quietly. They continued exploring the station, finding more evidence to support their new theory. In the creature containment area, they discovered the holding cells where the adult Void Stalkers had been kept. The walls were scored with claw marks, but not from escape attempts. The marks formed patterns, almost like writing. "Can you translate any of this?" Dongsu asked Hyejin. She studied the markings with her xenolinguistic equipment. "It's not language as we understand it, but there are emotional resonances embedded in the telepathic traces. Sadness, longing, desperate love." So Young's communication equipment suddenly came alive with incoming messages from across the sector. "Captain, I'm receiving priority alerts from multiple colonies. The Void Stalkers have been sighted at the Titan Mining Complex, the new Seoul Agricultural Station, and the Busan Trade Hub." "Any casualties?" Taeho asked. That's what's strange, So Young replied, reading through the reports. Minimal casualties at each location, mostly injuries from people panicking and running. The creatures seem to be avoiding direct contact with civilians. Dongsu walked to a viewing port and stared out at the stars. Somewhere out there, two desperate parents were searching for their children, causing panic wherever they went, but not actually harming the people who got in their way. Sir, So Young said urgently, I'm getting a priority transmission from Coalition Command. They're mobilizing the entire 7th Fleet. Admiral Lee wants to use orbital bombardment to eliminate the threat before it spreads to core worlds. How long do we have? Dongsu asked. 18 hours until the fleet arrives at the creature's last known location. He-Jin looked up from her research. Captain, if we're right about this, those creatures aren't the monsters everyone thinks they are. They're just parents trying to find their babies. Dongsu made a decision that would change everything. Then we need to find those cubs before the fleet turns two desperate parents into space dust. Captain Dongsu stood in his ready room, staring at the data screen that showed the location of the 3 Void Stalker cubs. The file had been buried deep in the research station's database, marked with the highest security codes. It had taken So Young 2 hours to crack the encryption. New Busan Agricultural Colony, he read aloud. Biological Dynamics Corporation, Sub-Level Research Facility. Dr. Hyejin sat across from him, her face pale with worry. Captain, that's a black site. Officially, it doesn't exist. They perform experiments there that the Galactic Council would never approve. What kind of experiments? Dongsu asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. The files mentioned behavioral modification, telepathic suppression, and something called predator domestication protocols, Hyejin replied, her voice filled with disgust. They've been torturing those cubs for months. Security Commander Tae-ho entered the room, his expression grim. Captain, I've just received new orders from Coalition Command. We're to join the fleet at coordinates 447 Alpha and prepare for orbital bombardment of any planet where the Void Stalkers are detected. Orbital bombardment, Dongsu repeated slowly. They're planning to destroy entire worlds to stop two creatures, who are just looking for their children. Sir, with respect, these aren't just any creatures, Tae-ho said. Void Stalkers have destroyed dozens of colonies in the past. The Council considers them a threat to galactic civilization. Hyejin stood up abruptly. But we know better now. We've seen the evidence. These aren't mindless killers. They're parents whose children were stolen and tortured. The Council won't care, Tae-ho replied. All they see is the threat. All they know is that Void Stalkers mean death and destruction. Dongsu walked to the viewing port in his ready room. Outside, he could see other Coalition ships moving toward the rally point. Soon, they would all be part of a massive fleet preparing to commit what he now realized would be murder. What if we could reunite them? He said quietly. Both officers stared at him. Sir, Tae-ho asked, what if we could get the cubs back to their parents? Would that end this crisis? Hyejin's eyes lit up. The research data suggests that Void Stalkers are only aggressive when they feel threatened or when their family is in danger. In their natural habitat, they actually avoid contact with other species. Captain, Tae-ho said carefully, are you suggesting we disobey direct orders from Coalition Command and attempt to rescue the cubs ourselves? That's exactly what I'm suggesting, Dongsu replied. Tae-ho looked like he was about to argue, but Dongsu held up his hand. Commander, I've served in the Coalition fleet for 15 years. I've followed orders that I disagreed with, orders that cost lives, orders that I regretted later. But this time is different. He turned to face both officers. This time, we have a chance to prevent a massacre, not just of the Void Stalkers, but of all the innocent people who will die when the fleet starts bombing planets. The cubs are being held on New Busan, Hyejin said. If we can get there before the fleet arrives, we might be able to free them. And then what? Taeho asked. How do we get them back to their parents without getting torn apart in the process? We'll have to trust that they'll recognize we're trying to help, Dong-su said. It's a risk, but it's better than doing nothing while the fleet prepares for genocide. Communications Officer So Young's voice came over the intercom. Captain, I'm receiving urgent messages from multiple sources. The Void Stalkers have been detected in the New Busan system. They're moving toward the planet. Dong-su smiled grimly. They found the trail. They know where their cubs are. Sir, So Young continued, Coalition Command is ordering all ships to the New Busan system immediately. Fleet Admiral Kim is preparing to implement Protocol 7. Protocol 7. Dong-su knew what that meant. Complete sterilization of any planet deemed to pose a threat to galactic security. No survivors, no exceptions. How long until the fleet arrives at New Busan? He asked. 16 hours, sir. Dong-su made his decision. Set course for New Busan, maximum speed. We're going to get there first. Captain, Taeho said urgently, this is mutiny. If we disobey these orders, we'll be court-martialed, at best. At worst, they'll consider us traitors and destroy us along with the planet. Then we better make sure we succeed, Dong-su replied. So Young, send a message to the crew. Tell them what we're really dealing with. Let them vote on whether to follow us. Within an hour, the entire crew had voted. Not a single person chose to abandon the mission. Even the junior technicians and maintenance staff wanted to help save the cubs and prevent the destruction of New Busan. As their ship raced through hyperspace toward the agricultural colony, Hyejin worked frantically to analyze everything they knew about Void Stalker behavior. According to the research, they communicate primarily through telepathic emotional resonance, she explained. If we can project peaceful intentions strongly enough, they might understand that we're not a threat. What about the cubs? Dong-su asked. What condition will they be in after months of experimentation? Hyejin's expression darkened. The files suggest they've been subjected to severe trauma, telepathic dampening, physical restraints, separation, anxiety. They'll be terrified of everything, which means their parents will be even more protective and dangerous, Taeho observed. Exactly, Hyejin agreed. Injured young and desperate parents make for an extremely volatile situation. So Young looked up from her communication station. Captain, I'm detecting some interesting transmissions from the New Busan system. The adult Void Stalkers aren't attacking the planet directly. They're circling it, sending out what appear to be telepathic calls. Calling to their cubs, Dong-su realized. The planet's defense forces are mobilizing, So Young continued. But they're not engaging the creatures either. It's like both sides are waiting for something. They're waiting for us, Dong-su said. The parents know their children are down there, and the cubs probably sense their parents nearby. Everyone's waiting to see what happens next. He walked to the bridge's main viewing port and watched the stars streak past as they traveled through hyperspace. In a few hours, they would arrive at New Busan and attempt something that had never been done before in galactic history. They were going to try to make peace with the galaxy's most feared predators by returning their stolen children. The surface of New Busan looked peaceful from orbit. Rolling green fields stretched to the horizon, dotted with farm buildings and processing centers. It was hard to believe that somewhere beneath those innocent-looking crops, 3 young creatures were being held prisoner. Captain Dong-su studied the scanning results on his command screen. The facility is hidden under the main agricultural complex, he said to his crew. 5 levels underground, heavily shielded. I'm detecting the Void Stalker parents, So Young reported. They're maintaining orbit on the far side of the planet. But their telepathic calls are getting stronger. Dr. Hyejin looked up from her analysis station. The emotional resonance is off the charts, pure desperation mixed with rage. They know their cubs are close, but they can't reach them. Security Commander Taeho checked his equipment one more time. The facility's defenses are military grade. Automated weapons, energy shields, and a full security team. This won't be easy. Nothing about this has been easy, Dongsu replied. But we've come this far. They took a shuttle down to the planet's surface, landing near the agricultural complex during the local night cycle. The buildings looked normal enough: storage silos, processing plants, and administrative offices. But Hyejin's scanners detected the hidden entrance to the underground facility. The entrance is behind the main storage building, she whispered, as they moved carefully through the shadows. Biometric locks, armed guards, the works. Taeho disabled the security system with tools he wasn't supposed to have. Coalition Special. Operations training has its advantages, he said with a small smile. They made their way down into the facility, deeper and deeper underground. Each level had stronger security than the last. The walls were thick metal, designed to contain even the strongest creatures. I'm picking up biosigns, Hyejin reported quietly. 3 small life forms, extremely weak. The cubs, Dongsu said grimly. They reached the lowest level and found what they were looking for. 3 containment cells, each holding a young void stalker. The cubs were nothing like their massive parents. They were small, about the size of human children, covered in soft gray fur. Their large eyes held a mixture of fear and pain that broke Dongsu's heart. They're dying, Hyejin whispered, running her medical scanner over the nearest cub. Malnutrition, stress trauma, telepathic suppression damage. Whatever they've been doing to these creatures, it's killing them slowly. The cubs cowered away from them at first, too scared to trust anyone. But as Hyejin worked to open their cell doors, something changed. The cubs began to make soft sounds, not quite cries, but something that sounded almost like hope. Can you understand us? Dongsu asked softly, kneeling down to the smallest cub's level. The creature looked at him with those huge eyes and made a small chirping sound. Then, impossibly, Dongsu felt a gentle touch in his mind. Not the aggressive telepathic attack he had expected, but something warm and trusting. They're trying to communicate, So Young said in amazement. I'm getting telepathic readings, but they're not hostile. They're grateful. Suddenly, alarms began blaring throughout the facility. Red lights flashed and automated security systems came online. Proximity alert, a mechanical voice announced. Unauthorized life forms detected approaching facility perimeter. The parents, Taeho said. They've found us. Through the facility's communication system, they could hear explosions and the sound of tearing metal from the upper levels. The adult void stalkers had arrived, and they were coming for their children. We need to move now, Dongsu ordered. Can the cubs travel? Hyejin was already administering emergency medical treatment to the weakest one. This one is in critical condition. Moving him could kill him, but leaving him here definitely will. The sounds of destruction were getting closer. The facility's defenses were no match for 2 desperate parents with claws that could cut through. Steal. I'll carry him, Dongsu said, gently lifting the smallest cub. The creature was lighter than he had expected, its small body trembling with weakness. Captain, Taeho said urgently, the facility's automated defenses are engaging the adult creatures. If we don't get out of here soon, we'll be caught in the crossfire. They began making their way back toward the surface, but progress was slow. One cub could barely walk, and Dongsu was carrying the weakest one. Behind them, the sounds of battle grew louder as the parents fought through level after level of security. The adults are following the cubs' telepathic signals, Hyejin observed. They know exactly where we are. Is that good or bad? So Young asked. Depends on whether they see us as rescuers or kidnappers, Dongsu replied grimly. They reached the 3rd underground level when the facility's main power failed. Emergency lighting cast strange shadows on the walls and the air circulation system shut down. Main defensive grid offline, announced the mechanical voice. Initiating lockdown protocol. Heavy blast doors began sliding shut throughout the facility, trying to trap everyone inside. Tejo managed to wedge one door open with his rifle, but they were running out of time. "Captain," So Young said, her voice shaking, "I'm reading massive life signs directly above us. Both adult creatures are in the facility now." The sound of approaching footsteps echoed through the corridors. Not human footsteps, but something much larger and more powerful. The cubs in their arms began making excited chirping sounds, calling to their parents. "They know we have their children," Hee-Jin whispered. Dong-Su adjusted his grip on the small cub he was carrying. The creature looked up at him with those huge, trusting eyes, and he felt another gentle touch in his mind. This time, the feeling was clearer. It was gratitude, mixed with desperate hope. "Whatever happens next," he said to his crew, "remember that we're doing the right thing." The footsteps were getting closer. Soon they would face the galaxy's most feared predators with nothing but 3 injured cubs and the hope that love could overcome fear. The cubs continued chirping, their calls growing stronger as their parents approached. And from somewhere, in the darkness ahead, 2 deep voices answered. Not roars of rage, but sounds that could only be described as relief. Parents calling to their children, children calling back. The moment of truth was almost here. The emergency lighting flickered and died, plunging the corridor into almost complete darkness. Captain Dong-Su held the weakest cub closer to his chest, feeling the small creature's rapid heartbeat against his uniform. Behind him, his crew moved, quietly, each carrying or helping one of the other cubs. Then the footsteps stopped. In the silence that followed, Dong-Su could hear his own breathing, the soft whimpering of the injured cubs, and something else. A low sound, like wind through deep caves, but somehow full of emotion. 2 glowing eyes appeared in the darkness ahead of them. Then 2 more, several feet away. The adult void stalkers had found them. "Nobody move," Dong-Su whispered to his crew. "Let them see that we're helping their children." The creatures stepped into the dim light cast by the facility's emergency systems. Even having read about them in reports, nothing had prepared Dong-Su for seeing them in person. They were massive, standing 3 meters tall, with powerful bodies, covered in dark fur that seemed to absorb light. Their claws, each as long as a human hand, could have torn through the hull of a starship. But what struck Dong-Su most was their eyes. They weren't the cold, predatory eyes he had expected. They were filled with desperate parental love and terrible fear. The female void stalker took a step forward. Her claws extended, razor-sharp and deadly. Behind her, the male made a low growling sound that vibrated through the metal walls. The cub in Dong-Su's arms lifted its small head and made a weak chirping sound. Both adult creatures froze instantly. "Easy," Dong-Su said softly, not sure if he was talking to the creatures or to himself. "We're not here to hurt them. We're trying to help." Dr. Hye-Jin slowly activated her portable translator. The device had been modified to work with Void Stalker telepathic frequencies, though they had never tested it under these conditions. "Can you understand us?" she asked gently. The male creature's head tilted slightly. His glowing eyes focused on Hye-Jin, then moved to examine each member of the crew. When his gaze fell on the cubs they were carrying, his expression changed completely. A sound came from deep in his chest, not a growl, but something that sounded almost like a sob. The female moved closer, her massive head lowering toward her smallest child in Dong-Su's arms. For a moment that seemed to last forever, the most feared predator in the galaxy and a human starship captain stared at each other across an impossible divide. Then the cub reached out one tiny paw toward its mother. The female void stalker's claws retracted. She made a soft sound, almost like a purr, and gently touched her child's outstretched paw with the tip of one massive finger. "They understand," So Young whispered in amazement. Hye-Jin's translator began picking up telepathic signals, not words, but pure emotion, transmitted directly from mind to mind. Pain, relief, gratitude, and overwhelming love flooded through the device. "They're thanking us," Hyojin said, tears streaming down her face. "They know we saved their children." Security. Commander Taeho, who had been ready to fight to the death moments before, slowly lowered his weapon. "I never thought I'd see anything like this," he said quietly. The male Void Stalker approached the cub that Security Commander Taeho was supporting. This one was stronger than the others and managed to stand on its own, though it swayed weakly. The massive creature knelt down, bringing his head level with his child, and made gentle rumbling sounds. But their reunion was interrupted by new alarms blaring through the facility. "Warning," announced the mechanical voice. "Coalition fleet. Detected entering system. All personnel report to emergency stations." Through the facility's communication system, they could hear voices from the surface. "This is Admiral Kim of the Coalition's 7th Fleet. You have 30 minutes to evacuate the planet before we begin orbital bombardment." 30 minutes, Dong-Su said grimly. "They're not waiting for confirmation. They're going to destroy everything." The adult Void Stalkers seemed to understand the urgency. The female gently took her smallest cub from Dong-Su's arms, cradling the tiny creature against her massive chest. The male helped his other 2 children stand, supporting them with surprising gentleness. "We need to get them off the planet," Taeho said. "But how? Our shuttle can't carry creatures that size." Hye-Jin was scanning the adult creatures with her instruments. "Captain, I'm reading some unusual energy signatures. These creatures don't just have telepathic abilities, they have some kind of biological space travel capability." "What do you mean?" Dong-Su asked. "I think they can survive in vacuum," she explained. "Their skin shows adaptations for space travel, and their telepathic abilities seem connected to some kind of natural navigation system." The female Void Stalker seemed to understand what they were discussing. She made a series of complex sounds, and suddenly images appeared in everyone's mind. Not words, but clear pictures of a living ship, grown rather than built, that responded to telepathic commands. "They have their own ship," So Young said in wonder. "It's orbiting on the far side of the planet." "But the cubs are too weak to travel through space," Hee-Jin observed. "They need medical attention and a pressurized environment." The male creature made another sound, and new images filled their minds. This time they saw their own shuttle, but modified somehow. The Void Stalkers were asking if they could travel together. "They want us to help them get their children to their ship," Dong-Su realized. More alarms sounded from above. The Coalition fleet was getting closer, and time was running out. 20 minutes until orbital bombardment commences, the mechanical voice announced. The female Void Stalker looked directly at Dong-Su and made a sound that needed no translation. It was a plea for help, one parent asking another to save their children. Captain Dong-Su had spent his entire career following orders, respecting protocol, and maintaining the peace between species. But standing in that underground facility, holding a dying alien child while its desperate parents begged for help, all of that seemed less important than one simple truth. These creatures weren't monsters. They were a family. "We'll get you all off this planet," he promised. "All of us, together." The adult creatures seemed to understand, and for the first time since the crisis began, the telepathic resonance coming from them carried a note of hope rather than despair. Above them, the Coalition fleet prepared to turn an entire world to ash. But in the depths of the facility, 2 species that had never communicated before were working together to save 3 small lives. The galaxy was about to learn something new about both Void Stalkers and humans. The evacuation became a careful dance between 2 species that had never worked together before. Captain Dong-Su carried the weakest cub, while Dr. Hee-Jin administered emergency medical treatment as they moved. The adult Void Stalkers used their massive claws to clear debris and torn metal from their path, opening a route to the surface. 15 minutes until bombardment, So-young reported, checking her portable communication device. The facility's automated defenses had been completely destroyed by the adult creature's initial assault. They moved through corridors filled with twisted metal and sparking electronics, the emergency lighting casting strange shadows on the walls. Security Commander Tae-ho supported one of the stronger cubs, amazed at how light the young creature was despite its size. "They're mostly fur," he observed, "built for zero-gravity environments." The male Void Stalker made a rumbling sound, and suddenly Tae-ho felt images in his mind. He saw vast spaces between stars, worlds of ice and crystal where these creatures had evolved. They weren't planet-bound predators at all, but space dwellers who had been captured far from their home. "They're nomads," he said in wonder. "They travel between the stars, never staying in one place for long." As they reached the upper levels of the facility, they could hear sounds from outside. Evacuation ships were launching from the planet's surface, carrying the agricultural workers and administrative staff to safety. The Coalition fleet had given everyone time to escape before beginning the bombardment. Everyone except the creatures. They were planning to destroy. "Our shuttle is just outside the main entrance," Dong-su said, "but I don't know if it can carry everyone." The female Void Stalker seemed to understand his concern. She made a series of complex sounds, and images appeared in everyone's mind again. This time they saw the shuttle modified with some kind of organic attachment, a living pod that could house the adult creatures. "They can create a temporary life." "Support system," Hyojin said, studying the images. "Something biological that interfaces with our technology." They emerged from the facility into the cool night air of New Busan. Above them, stars twinkled peacefully, giving no sign of the massive fleet preparing to rain destruction on the planet. The shuttle sat on its landing pad, looking impossibly small compared to the adult Void Stalkers. But the male creature approached it and placed his massive hands on the hull. Where he touched, the metal began to change, growing and flowing like living tissue. "Incredible," Hyojin breathed. "They can manipulate matter at the molecular level through telepathic control." Within minutes, the shuttle had grown organic pods on either side, each large enough to house an adult Void Stalker. The additions looked strange but functional, with transparent membranes that would allow the creatures to see out while protecting them from vacuum. 10 minutes until bombardment commences, So-young announced. They loaded the cubs into the shuttle's main cabin, where Hyojin could continue treating them during the flight. The smallest one, the cub that Dong-su had carried, was still critically weak, but seemed to be responding to treatment. The adult creatures climbed into their organic pods, and the membranes sealed around them. Through the transparent walls, Dong-su could see them settling in for the journey to their own ship. "All aboard," he called to his crew. "Let's get everyone home." The shuttle lifted off from New Busan's surface with its unusual cargo. As they climbed toward orbit, So-young established communication with the Coalition fleet. "This is Captain Dong-su of the science vessel Harmony's Edge," he broadcast on all frequencies. "Do not begin bombardment. We have civilians aboard, including the Void Stalker family." The response came immediately from Admiral Kim. "Captain Dong-su, you are ordered to maintain safe distance from the target creatures. We will commence bombardment in 7 minutes. "Admiral, the creatures are not hostile," Dong-su replied. "They were searching for their stolen children. The crisis is over." "That is not your determination to make, Captain. Those creatures represent a threat to galactic civilization." In the shuttle's cabin, the cubs were making soft, chirping sounds, calling to their parents in the pods outside. The adult creatures responded with gentle rumbles that vibrated through the shuttle's hull. Hyojin was monitoring the telepathic communications between the family members. "Captain, they're not just talking to each other. They're broadcasting their story." "What do you mean?" "Their telepathic range is much greater than we thought. They're sending out their experiences, their emotions, their gratitude. Every telepathic..." species in the system is receiving it, So Young's communication equipment came alive with incoming messages. Captain, I'm getting reports from all over the sector. The telepathic broadcasts are being picked up by coalition telepaths, by the Centauri Council, even by some of the artificial intelligences. The story was spreading faster than light through the galaxy's telepathic networks. The image of desperate parents searching for stolen children, of a human crew risking everything to reunite a family, of gentle hands carrying injured cubs back to safety. "Admiral," came a new voice over the communication system. "This is Counselor Yeva of the Telepathic Assembly. We have received the Void Stalker's communication. These creatures are not the monsters we believed them to be." More voices joined the transmission. Representatives from dozens of worlds, all confirming that they had received the telepathic broadcasts. The true story of the crisis was spreading throughout the galaxy in real time. Bombardment delayed pending council review, Admiral Kim announced reluctantly. The shuttle reached orbit and rendezvoused with the Void Stalker ship. It was unlike anything Dong-Su had ever seen, more grown than built, with flowing organic lines that seemed to pulse with life. It was beautiful and alien and somehow peaceful. The adult creatures transferred to their ship, carefully carrying their cubs. But before they left the shuttle, the female approached Captain Dong-Su one more time. She gently touched his face with one massive finger, and suddenly his mind was filled with images. He saw the cubs growing up healthy and strong, traveling between the stars with their parents. He saw future meetings between humans and Void Stalkers, not as enemies but as friends. He saw a galaxy where different species could understand each other across the vast divide of evolution and culture. And through it all, he saw himself as others would remember him, not as a military commander or a starship captain, but as someone who chose compassion over fear, understanding over prejudice. The image that would spread throughout the galaxy was simple but powerful. A human gently carrying an alien child back to its parents, proving that love and family were universal concepts that transcended species boundaries. As the Void Stalker ship departed for the deep spaces between stars, its telepathic message continued to spread. The cubs were safe, the family was reunited, and the galaxy had learned something important about both humans and the creatures they had feared. In the years that followed, the Void Stalkers became humanity's most unexpected allies. They served as ambassadors to species that humans couldn't communicate with, using their telepathic abilities to bridge gaps between civilizations. And whenever young beings of any species heard the story, they learned the same lesson that Captain Dong-Su had discovered in the depths of that underground facility. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply carry someone home. The cubs grew up strong and healthy, and when they were old enough, they returned to Coalition space as ambassadors themselves. They carried with them the memory of gentle human hands lifting them from darkness, and they made sure that story was never forgotten. The galaxy was a better place because one human captain chose to see parents instead of predators, children instead of threats, and in the quiet spaces between the stars, the Void Stalkers sang songs of gratitude that would echo through the cosmos for generations to come.